story of Noah's Ark throughout the centuries has been passed down as a powerful testimony of judgment and redemption, a moment where the end of one age gave way to a new beginning, determined by the sovereign will of the Creator. Amid the chaos of the waters that covered the earth, one man was called by name, a man righteous in his generation, and with him, his household, his lineage, his future. Noah did not enter the ark alone.
He entered accompanied by those who would carry forward the continuation of humanity. His family was preserved while the ancient world was consumed. The waters rose, the heavens were opened, and everything that breathed outside the ark perished. But inside it, there was life, there was promise, there was purpose.
And yet, there is a detail that remains between the lines, silent, almost ignored. The women. Little is said about them. Few questions are asked about them. Yet they were there, present in every decisive moment of that passage between the end and the beginning. Who were the wives of Shem, the patriarch of the Semitic peoples, of Ham, whose descendants would shape entire nations, and of Japheth, whose lineage would spread to the ends of the earth, and even deeper still? Who was the woman who stood beside Noah, the one who also heard the announcement of judgment, who also entered the ark, who also passed through the flood? The sacred text acknowledges their existence, but remains silent about their names. And that silence raises questions. Why were none of them named? Why were their stories not recorded with the same care given to the patriarchs? Were they merely secondary figures, or is there something deeper hidden beneath this omission? Because when the Bible is silent, it is not always absence. Sometimes it is mystery, and perhaps an intentional one. These women did not merely accompany their husbands. They left everything behind. They lived through the days leading up to judgment. They heard the warnings. They watched the ark being built while the world around them remained indifferent. And when the time came, they entered, not merely as companions, but as bearers of the continuation of life. They crossed the impossible. They felt the weight of the days shut inside the ark. They heard the constant sound of the waters. They lived through isolation, uncertainty, waiting. And when the waters receded, they were there, silent, yet essential. The story of Noah echoes through the ages, recorded not only in Scripture, but reflected in ancient traditions around the world, accounts that speak of a great flood, of destruction and survival. Distinct civilizations, separated by time and distance, preserved similar memories. Yet, in nearly all of these versions, the focus remains the same: the cataclysm, the ark, and the chosen man. But what if there is an element that has been left in the shadows? Today, we will not focus on the waters, nor on the storm, nor even on the construction of the ark. Today, we turn our eyes to what remained hidden, to those who were present, but not remembered, the women of the ark. We know that Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. We also know that each of them had a wife, and we know that Noah himself was married. This means that within that wooden structure floating upon the judgment of the world, there was more than just the 8 survivors mentioned. There were untold stories, unrecorded voices, lives that were preserved, but not documented. Why? The book of Genesis, so detailed in genealogies, names, and lineages, chooses not to reveal who these women were. It confirms their presence, but not their identity. And that is not common, because in other moments, names are preserved, stories are told, lineages are carefully recorded. So why here? The silence. Who were they before the flood? From which families did they come? Did they share Noah's faith? Or were they transformed by what they witnessed? And after they left the ark, how did they influence the generations that followed? Questions like these find no direct answers in the traditional biblical text, but that does not mean there are no clues. Ancient records, traditions preserved outside the canon, and texts such as the Book of Jubilees offer fragments, echoes of a story that may have been partially forgotten. Ancient Jewish traditions also attempt to fill these gaps, assigning names, origins, and even narratives to these women. Would these sources be reliable, or merely human attempts to answer divine silence? Perhaps a bit of both. In this video, we will journey through these layers of tradition, history, and interpretation. We will explore what has been said and what has been left unsaid. We will investigate not only the names that may have been attributed to these women, but the role they may have played in one of the most decisive moments in human history. Prepare yourself, because when we look at this overlooked detail, something begins to shift. The narrative of the flood is no longer just about destruction. It also reveals preservation, not only of bodies, but of stories, of legacies, of voices that pass through the waters, even without being heard. The narrative of the Great Flood is one of the oldest and most impactful in human history. Noah and his family were chosen to survive the destruction of the world, ensuring the continuation of the human race. Yet among the passengers of the ark, there are figures whose stories were relegated to silence, the wives on board. Who were these women, and why were their names erased from the official narrative? We know from the scriptures themselves that the ark was not inhabited by Noah alone as the central figure of a great divine event. It was filled by an entire family, a structure carefully preserved to ensure that life would not only survive, but continue. There were Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and the wives of each of them, not as secondary details, but as an essential part of a greater plan. The book of Genesis itself confirms this reality clearly. In chapter 6, verse 18, God declares, "But I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall enter the ark, you, your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives with you." There is no doubt they were there, but they were unnamed. And it is at this point that the text ceases to be merely historical and becomes deeply intriguing. Because while it affirms their presence, it completely silences their identities. No lineage, no origin, no personal story, only existence. Why? Why would a text so meticulous in recording genealogies, names, and lineages choose to omit precisely those who would carry forward humanity? What was, in fact, the role of these women in the rebuilding of the world after the flood? Within Catholic tradition, some clues begin to emerge. Ancient writings such as the Book of Tobit, dated to around 225 BC, suggest that Noah's wife may have been a relative of his, possibly a descendant of Seth, the righteous son of Adam. If this is true, then something even deeper is taking place. It would indicate that Noah was not only chosen for his righteousness, but that he also preserved a lineage considered pure, a direct continuation of those who remained faithful since ancient times. But what about the daughters-in-law? Here, the mystery deepens. Because while there is a possibility that Noah's wife descended from Seth, there is no confirmation regarding the origin of the wives of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And this uncertainty opens one of the most debated questions throughout the centuries. Were these women descendants of Seth or of Cain? If they came from the line of Seth, it would reinforce the idea that only the righteous were preserved, a clear separation between faithfulness and corruption. But if, in some way, they were descendants of Cain, then the new humanity would carry within it traces of the ancient world, not only genetically, but spiritually, an invisible continuity, a mark that passed through the waters. This possibility raises profound implications, because it would mean that the flood was not an absolute end, but also a transition, and that what existed before was not entirely erased. The New Testament itself, briefly touches on this event. In the first epistle of Peter, chapter 3, verse 20, we read that 8 souls were saved through the waters. 8, not 7, not 6, 8, inevitably including the women, but once again, without names, without stories, without a voice. Is this merely an irrelevant detail, or a silence filled with meaning? Because throughout the scriptures, when something is not said, it is often because there is something to be sought. And it is precisely in this space, between what was revealed and what was concealed, that ancient traditions begin to emerge. As we move beyond the canonical text, we encounter echoes preserved in forgotten writings, fragments of a memory that resisted time. Among them, the Dead Sea Scrolls stand out, discovered in the caves of Qumran, one of the most significant findings in ancient history. These manuscripts not only preserve ancient versions of biblical texts, but also reveal expanded narratives, additional details, and perspectives that did not make it into the official canon. Among these writings is the so-called Genesis Apocryphon, and here, something begins to change. Because in these texts, the women of the Ark are no longer merely silent presences. They begin to take on an active role, an essential role. According to these traditions, they were not there only as wives or future mothers of the new humanity. They were guardians of something the flood could not erase: knowledge, memory, the wisdom of ancient times. While the world was being destroyed outside, inside the Ark, not only lives were preserved, but also teachings, practices, traditions, and possibly revelations. These women, according to these records, were responsible for transmitting what was not written in stone, but carried through experience, through oral tradition, through lived reality. They carried the invisible, and when the waters receded, they did not only continue humanity, but also the knowledge that came before it. And perhaps that is exactly why their names were not recorded, because their role was not to be remembered by men, but to ensure that the story itself would never be forgotten. This revelation changes everything, because when we look more closely, we realize that the post-flood world was not merely a biological restart. It was a spiritual renewal. It was not just about filling the earth with life again, but restoring what had nearly been erased by the waters: memory, tradition, and the knowledge of the true God. And in this scenario, the women are no longer secondary figures. They take a central place. Among the ancient texts that shed light on this mystery, the Book of Jubilees stands out, a work that, although not part of the traditional canon of most Bibles, preserves extremely ancient traditions. It is in this book that we find, perhaps for the first time, a name that breaks the silence: Emzara, a name unknown to many, yet filled with meaning in Semitic traditions. According to the Book of Jubilees, Emzara was not merely Noah's wife. She was a fundamental part of the plan for the continuation of humanity. And more than that, she may have been the true matriarch of the post-flood world. If Noah lived around 950 years, some traditions suggest that Emzara may have reached a similar longevity, possibly 900 years or more. This places her not only as a survivor, but as a living witness to entire generations that emerged after the judgment. A woman who saw the world before, endured the destruction, and lived to see the world after. A new Eve, not merely in a symbolic sense, but potentially in a historical one. The one who carried within herself the beginning of everything, once again. But this is not the only tradition. Within ancient Jewish interpretations, there are divergences. Some sources suggest that Noah's wife may have been Naamah, a figure associated with the lineage of Cain. Others maintain the name Emzara, especially based on traditions connected to the Dead Sea Scrolls. And this difference is not small, because if Noah's wife were a descendant of Cain, then the Ark itself carried within it 2 distinct lineages: an invisible tension, an unexpected union between what was considered righteous and what had been corrupted. On the other hand, If Mzara, linked to the lineage of Seth, is the correct identification, then we see a clear attempt to preserve a spiritually pure heritage. Two possibilities, two narratives, and no definitive answer. The Book of Jubilees itself reinforces the importance of these women not merely as wives, but as pillars of the reconstruction of the world. And this idea also echoes in rabbinic traditions found in texts such as the Midrash and the Talmud, which, although they do not directly detail their identities, point to something essential. These women were not there by chance. They were necessary, essential, because after the flood, it was not enough to survive. It was necessary to rebuild, and to rebuild not only homes, but cultures, values, traditions, and that cannot be done alone. Among the traditions that support the name Naamah, she is described as a woman of remarkable beauty and virtue, someone associated with the rebirth of life after destruction. Her image carries deep symbolism, continuity, fertility, restoration, and yet still surrounded by mystery. Because in the end, regardless of the name, Mzara or Naamah, what remains is the function, the role, the mission. As we continue this journey, we encounter another revealing fragment. When speaking about the wives of Noah's sons, the Book of Jubilees presents names that are rarely mentioned. Among them, Sedketulbab, the wife of Shem, a complex name, almost lost in time. Yet, according to these traditions, it carries an immense legacy. She is identified as an ancestor of the Semitic nations, peoples who would shape the course of human history, including Arabs, Syrians, and Jews. This means that behind entire civilizations, there is a woman whose name nearly vanished, and that is not insignificant, because each of these women carried a responsibility that went far beyond survival. They were matriarchs of a world that did not yet exist, women who had to adapt to a completely transformed reality, a world washed, judged, and reset. No cities, no structures, no references, only memory and promise. Sedketulbab, as the wife of Shem, likely shared a similar longevity, spanning centuries. This means she not only gave rise to peoples, she witnessed their growth. She transmitted values, identity, and history. She did not merely bear descendants, she helped shape civilizations. And when we look at the full picture, something becomes impossible to ignore. These women were not at the margins of history. They were at its center, silent in the text, but indispensable in reality. As we move forward, we arrive at the wife of Ham, a figure who, like the others, remains unnamed in the biblical text, but gains form through ancient traditions. According to the Book of Jubilees, her name was Neltamauk, a rare name, nearly forgotten, yet one that, within these traditions, carries the weight of entire nations. Like the other survivors of the Ark, it is believed that she lived for centuries, possibly around 600 years, a longevity that echoes the ancient world, when time seemed to stretch beyond what we can comprehend today. And she did not merely live, she gave rise, she became the root of peoples who still inhabit the earth today. Neltamauk is identified as an ancestor of various African nations, including Ethiopians, Sudanese, and others across the continent. She was the mother of Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan, names that would later become territories, cultures, and civilizations. But among all traditions that mention her, there is one that stands out. A curious story, almost unexpected, recorded by Hippolytus of Rome, a Christian writer of the 3rd century AD. According to this account, God gave Noah an unusual command: to eliminate the first person who would announce the beginning of the flood. A severe command, a test. And then, the unexpected happened. Neltamauk was going about her daily routine, baking bread like any other day, when suddenly a burst of water erupted from the oven, forcefully destroying the dough before her eyes. Water, appearing where it should not exist. A sign, an announcement. Startled, not fully understanding what was happening, she cried out, "The flood has begun!" And in that moment, the command was put to the test. But according to the tradition, God revoked the decree, because Noah would not need to raise his hand against someone from his own household, and so Neltamark was spared. A story that, although not part of the biblical canon, carries a powerful symbolism. Even in the midst of judgment, there is mercy, and preservation does not always follow human logic. Moving forward, we come to the wife of Japheth, and once again, it is the Book of Jubilees that offers a name, Adateneses, a figure who, like the others, passed through the flood and actively participated in the building of a new world. Although this text is considered apocryphal by many traditions, it remains an important source for understanding what was not detailed in the official records. And according to these traditions, Adateneses did not merely survive. She helped organize, to structure, to establish foundations, in a world that had been completely reset. Like Sedketulbab and Neltamark, it is believed that Adateneses also lived for around 600 years, long enough to witness the growth of generations, the rise of peoples, and the development of new cultures. As the wife of Japheth, she became the mother of Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshesh, and Tiras. And from these names emerged peoples who would shape much of human history: Greeks, Romans, Celts, Germanic tribes, Slavs, and even groups that would spread across Asia. This means that behind entire civilizations, there is a woman, a matriarch, a name almost forgotten, yet impossible to ignore when we look more closely. And then, the picture becomes complete. 3 women, 3 lineages, 3 roots that spread across the earth. But the challenge they faced went far beyond genealogy. Because when they left the Ark, they encountered a world unrecognizable, silent, empty, without cities, without structures, without references, only earth, sky, and memory. And in this new world, they had to do something extraordinary, begin again, but not merely by living, by teaching, by transmitting, by preserving. Oral tradition became essential. Stories had to be told, rituals had to be maintained, identities had to be rebuilt, and much of this fell upon them, because they were the ones who formed the next generations. They taught the children, they transmitted values, they preserved what could not be lost, not only survival skills, but principles, faith, memory. They carried the past while building the future. And this completely changes the way we see the Ark, because these women were not merely companions, they were foundational, they were structural, they were indispensable. Reflecting on this leads us to a deeper understanding of the flood narrative. It reveals that even in the most well-known stories, there are layers that remain hidden, waiting to be uncovered. Stories that remained in the shadows, voices that were not recorded, yet sustained everything. The wives of Noah, of Shem, of Ham, and of Japheth remind us that there is always more to explore, that every narrative carries depths beyond what is written, and that often what was not said is exactly what must be sought. I hope this video has awakened in you the curiosity to go beyond the words and the desire to explore the deeper layers of these ancient narratives. May we continue to question, investigate, and learn, valuing the essential role of every figure, including those who often go unnoticed in the great story of humanity. Thank you for joining me on this journey of discovery. Don't forget to leave your comment, like, share this video, and subscribe to the channel so we can continue exploring fascinating topics like this together. May God bless you, and I'll see you soon.